Welcome to the Northwood University Alumni Webinar Series. My name is Julia Damchek, and I will be your host and moderator today. Today, our webinar is featuring Northwood University professor, Dr. Gabriel Benzecry. In this webinar, Dr. Benzecry will revisit the classical liberal concept of spontaneous order and its relevance today. As Western societies face growing cultural and political polarization, can the principles of free enterprise and individual responsibility help bridge a divided society? The presentation invites us to consider how Northwood's mission can help conserve the social fabric that makes free societies flourish. Just a bit about Dr. Benzecry. He is the David E. Fry Professor of Free Market Economics here at Northwood, effective in fall of 2025. Originally from Brazil, Dr. Benzecry is a distinguished scholar specializing in Austrian economics and the history of economic thought, with particular focus on the intellectual contributions of F.A. Hayek and Ludwig von Mises. Dr. Benzecry holds a doctorate and master's degree in economics from Middle Tennessee State University and an undergraduate degree from Wake Forest, where he also minored in philosophy and entrepreneurship. He was awarded the 23 James M. Buchanan Dissertation Award from the Political Economy Research Institute at Middle Tennessee University, and his scholarly work has been published in prestigious journals, including the History of Political Economy and Journal of the History of Economic Thought. He is a passionate educator and mentor. Dr. Benzecry is committed to fostering independent inquiry and helping students understand the principles of liberty, free enterprise, and personal responsibility within the framework of our free market economy. And just a few reminders about our webinar today. We are recording, and we will email out the recording to all participants afterwards. We will also be sending out a survey asking for your feedback, so please participate in that survey. And we hope to have a few minutes at the end of the presentation for some Q&A. So remember to use the Q&A chat box at the bottom of your screen. Without any further ado, I would like to introduce and hand it over to Dr. Benzecry.
Thank you very much. Just to give a little background of this talk, this is inspired by one of the research projects that I had right after graduate school called The Conservative of the Spontaneous Order, where I tried to explain some of the foundations of classical liberalism and how it is relevant today. So just a disclosure as well, every image in this presentation is 100% historically accurate, and it's not by any means AI generated. So I divided this topic inspired in Star Wars a little bit because I am a fan of Star Wars. So we're going to have 4 parts of the talk. So first, we're going to start with a little history overview of human history. And I will argue here that the main idea that was being fostered in human societies was collectivism, and in different shapes and forms, but collectivism was, for most of human history, the main idea that people believed in. So here I have a timeline, a rough timeline of human history. And since the prehistorical era, we are in tribes, we're divided in tribes. So tribalism is the form of collectivism that is predominant. And then essentially we develop agriculture, which moves us away from that stage of nomadic tribalism, and civilization starts to rise. Now, ancient civilizations were organized in a way of having a monarch or a king that essentially controlled the entire population. So people did not have rights. The individual was not really valued. Instead, we had a king who was controlling the entirety of the society. And for most of human history, that was the case. Once we develop agriculture and we have territories that are established, we always had a king controlling the general population. Now that changes. We change this human condition from a king controlling everyone and essentially telling people what to do to a more Republican and liberal organization, mirroring what we have today in America. And that shift, that political shift, I argue, is a result of a change in ideas. And those ideas not only change the political environment around us, but also changes the economy in every single aspect of our lives. Just to put that change in perspective, I have here a data of the GDP in England. So GDP, the gross domestic product, measures how big an economy is essentially. So it's a measurement of every good and services produced in a country within a year. And in this specific data here, I have since the year 1270. And we can observe that from the year 1270 all the way to the mid 1700s, the human economic condition was stagnant, did not move whatsoever. Over 500 years of stagnation. And if we went back more in time, if we actually had reliable data to go back before 1270, I can basically guarantee that it would be the same stagnation. Thousands of years, essentially, of human stagnation, of no economic growth whatsoever. And then in the middle 1700s, we finally leave that stagnation and start picking up some pace. And we experience a gigantic, enormous, miraculous amount of economic growth. And it's even difficult to put that into perspective, the numbers, because it's such a tremendous growth that it's like facing the universe. It's hard to capture what is really going on, of how amazing this event was. But to help to draw a little bit of a perspective of how our condition improved, let me move away from economics a little bit and just look at the life expectancy. So here I have a data on the life expectancy of noble people in Europe from the year 800 until the 1800s. This is not the average person. This is not even the rich people. This is the elite of the elite. This is the nobility in Europe that is 0.01% of the population. So in this work here, essentially, Cummings looked at the life expectancy of 100,000 noble people in this 1,000 years span. And he found that for most of the time, from the year 800 to the 1800s, the life expectancy of people varied between 50 and 60 years old. Actually, it's not until the year 1700 that the life expectancy of the noble people, of kings, queens, and lords, it's not until the year 1700 that their life expectancy passes 55 years old. And by the way, this is excluding violence. So we're not including violence here, just natural death. And in the 1800s, which is not that long ago, the life expectancy of the noble class was around 56 years old. Now let's look at the poorest countries in the world. If we look at the poorest countries in the world, here I have Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali. The average person there, not the elites, not the top 1%, not the rich people in their country, the average person in that country are living above a life expectancy of above 60 years old. So on average, people in the poorest countries in the world today are living more than kings and queens for most of the history. This is extraordinary. This is amazing. If you told people this 250 years ago that would happen, people would not believe you. I think it's something very special. And my intention when I show this data is to be optimistic, to show the progress that we had. And I think bringing that optimism really, really matters, especially when we're facing some of the narratives and some of the challenges that we have today. So what caused that spark in human prosperity? Well, I think it was individualism, was a challenge of the ideas of the past. And I think everything starts with the Renaissance. When we go to the Renaissance, that's between the 14th and 17th century in Europe, we have a revival of the classical knowledge of Greece. We start having an emphasis on human reason, on creativity and experience. So suddenly the focus moves away from the kings and from authority and starts moving to the human experience. And that's a shift in idea. And science starts to flourishing as well. So we have Galileo, Copernicus, that are emerging in this Renaissance environment. So Copernicus found that the Earth was not in the center of the universe. Instead, we're going around the sun. Galileo discovered many moons in Jupiter. So he had the telescope. So there's a lot of progress already happening in the Renaissance period. But it's not until the Enlightenment that human spirit of human reason starts being applied in the political setting. So in the Enlightenment, we have reason and empirical science taking the spotlight for political theory. So we have authors like Adam Smith, John Locke, David Hume, Montesquieu, who start developing philosophies and use reason to question the human condition they're living in. So they question, does it make sense that we have a king who claims to have divine rights to rule over us? Does that make sense? They start using reason and they realize, no, that doesn't make sense. And we need to find a sort of philosophy that can justify our political conditions. So they develop things like the social contract. They start taking individualism to the heart. They recognize that every individual is important. And that's really where the roots of our modern Republican liberal democracy comes from. It's from the Enlightenment. We have a few events in history that are part of this environment, this intellectual environment. We have the Glorious Revolution, the French Revolution, but most importantly, the American Revolution. The American Revolution is the end result of the Enlightenment. So what is the result? What is the result of the Enlightenment? Free societies. Societies where we do not have a king controlling and telling people what to do, but instead, the average person, the common person, has the power to pursue happiness, has the power to pursue their own goals. And not only the willpower internally, but the ability of pursuing that politically and economically. Freedom starts to flourish in the world. Now, what was surprising is that in the moment that we had the least amount of authority from a king, the moment that kings lost the grip of power, where they were weakened, instead of having disorder, instead of having anarchy, instead we had social order and prosperity. And economists and political philosophers look at that and they really ask, how that happened? And there is this concept called the spontaneous order. So this is the idea that it is possible to establish social regularities, to have social organization without the need of a centralized power, that it is possible for different human beings pursuing their own goals and their own ends, their own objectives, to have social coordination. So this concept of the spontaneous order is going to inspire many Enlightenment thinkers. So Adam Smith is one of them that I want to highlight because he comes up with the concept of the invisible hand, that essentially he argues that when people pursue their own goals and ends, they end up helping the overall human condition. They end up promoting human well-being. This invisible hand concept. There is a famous example that Adam Smith mentions of the baker. He says, hey, you don't go to the bakery expecting the baker to sell you bread because the baker is on a godly mission to provide you bread. No, you go there and you buy the bread because the baker is trying to pursue his own end of providing to his family, of using the bread, selling the bread in order to pursue a personal end. And you are pursuing your own self-interest as well. You need to buy bread to give food to your family. So you're pursuing a goal that is inherent to yourself. And when you both pursue those goals, you end up collaborating. So the invisible hand is this concept that even when you pursue your own goals, your own self-interest, you end up helping the overall human condition. Frederick Bastiat also noticed, that is in the 1800s, he also noticed the same thing. He was looking at Paris, at how complex the commerce and the life in Paris was. And he claimed Paris gets fed. We don't have a king dictating what we're going to do. We don't have a central planning committee telling us what we're going to sell and for how much we're going to sell and how much bread should cost. No, people are all doing their own thing and it's organized. Everyone goes to the bakery or to the coffee shop and they know they're going to have what they want. there is social organization in the lack of a mind organizing people. So he also realized the power of the spontaneous order. But it is in the 20th century with F.A. Hayek that we really get crystal clear of what the spontaneous order is. So for Hayek, it's not only the market process, but laws, common law in itself, language, social norms. They are not dictated by a political party or by a king or a dictator. No, they are emergent orders. They come organically. They evolve in themselves. There is not a single mind that came up with them. They are emergent, spontaneous, and decentralized. And for Hayek, the main task of a social scientist was to explore that spontaneous order, to understand how society organized itself organically. And Hayek claimed, and this is a famous quote by him, The Fatal Conceit, the following: that the curious task of economics is to demonstrate to men how little they really know about what they imagine they can design. He was trying to bring methodological humility to economists, to understand that the world is extremely complex and that it's not the result of a single mind. So any effort that we have as economists or as social scientists to try to change the world is in itself dangerous, because we don't truly understand how complex the world really is. And in trying to mess with that, it's not a good idea. So he's trying to bring some sort of humility. But this idea of spontaneous order was not popular forever. I think after the Enlightenment, after we lived all the great benefits of the Enlightenment and of the liberal society that we have today, I think there is a drive to go back to the old way of the collectivist thinking. So I call this section here the collectivism strikes back. When I was working this research, my main fear was coming from the left. So my main focus was on the left. But I think today we also have a enormous threat on the right as well. But I'm going to start with the left. Here, I want to just point out one school of thought, just for the sake of time. That's the Frankfurt School. And Max Horkheimer was the main leader in that school of thought. So for them, the resulting order, society, was not the result of organic, emergent, spontaneous interactions. No, for them, society was a result of power dynamics, of control, of oppression. So let's take America, for example. If you ask a spontaneous order theorist, what is the resulting order in America today, they're going to say it's the result of the pursuit of happiness of millions and millions of people in this liberal framework that we have given by the American Constitution. That's going to be the answer. If you ask a critical theorist from the Frankfurt School, they're going to say it's a result of a power dynamic of a colonial state that created institutions to favor the white man and in order to oppress minorities, something along those lines. So they create a different narrative that is, by the way, not backed by any evidence or the data that we have to support this idea that society is really the result of a constructed order to oppress people. And in my paper, I put a lot of emphasis on challenging this idea, both empirically, but also philosophically. It's not true. We are more free than we ever was. We're extremely wealthy in historical terms. So the Enlightenment really brought human emancipation, and the resulting order is spontaneous. It's not oppression. So completely reject this. And we have now as well, coming from the right, also a push for collectivism. So here I'm mentioning Carl Schmitt. This is not in my paper. So this is just a new slide that I added to the presentation to also show the dangers of collectivism when it goes too much to the right as well. So Carl Schmitt is a 20th century German collectivist legal theorist. He was involved in the Nazi regime during World War II. And his ideas essentially is to reject the spontaneous order as well. He doesn't think that order can emerge spontaneously, that people pursuing their own ends are capable of creating social stability and social progress. But instead, you need a centralized power, usually through nationality, some type of strong national identity that needs to coordinate the way that society the direction that society is going. So he's becoming recently an influence of many post-liberal movements, and especially in the far right, he's becoming more and more cited and mentioned. So just to make that point, here's the Google Ngrams of Carl Schmitt, and we can see that post-1980s, we see a spark, and after the 2000s, that intensifies. So he's becoming, once again, relevant. And we can see that previously to that was during World War II that he had a little bit more mentions. But just like the left version, the right version is as bad. As soon as we put individuals as secondary and we put some type of group identity or collectivist identity on top of the individual, we're gonna end up with authoritarianism. And that needs to be challenged in the realm of ideas. So bringing back to the question, the main question in the talk is, how do we push back these collectivist trends? How do we protect freedom? How do we protect the spontaneous other? How do we return to individualism in our hearts? How do we do that? So I just want to highlight that the founding fathers were concerned about that. So Benjamin Franklin got asked once by Elizabeth Powell, what have we got, a republic or a monarchy? She asked him, and he replied, a republic if you can keep it. He knew that the current liberal republic that we have in America is delicate, and it needs to be defended in the realm of ideas, because there is always a drive for us to try to push things that we think are better for everyone once we reach power or get to power, and abuse that power. And essentially, the American spirit is to take away that emphasis on government solving solving your problems and bring to the individual, give individual more agency. So how do we conserve freedom? It cannot be with centralized power. It would be completely hypercritical if I came here that I'm criticizing both the right and the left, trying to use a central power government to push certain vision of the world. And if I come here and say the government needs to push that vision of the world. No, it starts with us. It starts in the individual level. It starts in our families, in our houses. And we need to foster in ourselves a life of personal responsibility, a life of virtue, try to be a better person, emphasize the family and moral values that are universal. So one of the big things of the Enlightenment is that they were able to make Judeo-Christian values mainstream. They were able to rationalize the idea that every human being is created equal. So those values are universal. So we need to embrace that. We need to trade. We need to, in our daily lives, pursue careers that are meaningful to us, and understand that regardless of what we're doing, we are contributing to society. Even when we're pursuing our own betterment, we're still helping other humans and other people. So trade plays a big role in that. And I think most importantly, especially today, we need a sense of optimism. We need optimism. We are being bombarded with social media. We're being bombarded with media in general, with negative things. And we need to take a step back and look at the data that I just presented earlier in the presentation, and realize that in historical terms, we are special and we're lucky. And we need to embrace that optimism, understand that the way to keep that progress going is not to go back to ideas that stagnated us for thousands of years, but instead embrace the ideas that drove human progress, which was individualism. So I think optimism is important. And every time I start an economics course, I want to put in historical perspective where we are today, and it is good. I know there are many things that we would like to change. I know that we have a feeling that things can be better, but in historical terms, we need to be happy and optimistic because things are looking great. And to close this presentation, I just want to call for an acceptance and to promote the ideas of the founding fathers. So I'm going to quote here the Declaration of Independence, which is the greatest political document ever written. And it really captures the American spirit and the spirit of our society that we have to preserve. So they say famously, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Benzecry. Okay, so we're going to open up the Q&A for anyone who might have a question for Professor Benzecry. Just type it in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we'll give you all a few minutes to do that. I just want to share a little plug for a few things, a few additional alumni activities and events we've got coming up while we're waiting for those questions. Most of you should be familiar with Project 100. That is where 100 alumni and friends gather up and each donate $100, and they pool their funding to award it to a student project here on campus. That will be happening next week, where 3 student groups will pitch their projects to the group of donors. We have a few openings left, so if any of you would like to join, we will post a link to that in our follow-up message to y'all today, along with the survey and the recording. Questions? We're still waiting. I guess you explained it that well, Dr. Benzecry. Okay, here we might have one here. Okay, Dr. Benzecry, what do you consider to be the greatest threats, whether right or left, to the optimism related to our continued success?
That's a great question. I think it's their pessimism. I think that's because it's the opposite, right? They both right and left, when they try to promote their current policies, they're coming from the position that the current situation, it's horrible and cannot be fixed by organically or spontaneously. And we need some type of government action top down to solve those problems. I think there are 2 things that they do. There's an overall worldview that is pessimistic, that they look at those problems and they cannot look at the past and see how we solved previous problems, which was not with government, it was with individual action, with business, with enterprise. And because they cannot see the positive of how we solve the problems, the optimism of where we are today, they end up giving solutions that are actually anti-progress, which is having the government to step up and solving the problems for them. So if we have an optimistic view of where we are today, understand that freedom and personal responsibility and free enterprise is what drove us from misery to prosperity, we're going to have more faith that those things are capable of solving most of our problems today as well. So we need that optimism of how we got here.
Thank you. All right, we still got a few minutes, so type in your questions. I'm going to do a few quick shout outs here today. I see Dave Doran on the call today. Thanks for joining us. Pretty sure you're coming in from Arizona. We've got some alumni joining us, I think, from Germany, from Florida, from Wisconsin. So that's why I love these webinars. You can join us from no matter where you are in the world.
Just on that question too, like, it was a great question. So I'm still thinking
Yeah,
about
keep going.
I think there's a lot of social media plays a huge role as well on that, because I think it amplifies amplifies the bad, and there's this mediatic component that we're looking things and we're more exposed to bad things, so we think that things are worse than they actually are. So every time something bad happens, it's all over the news, all over your Facebook and Instagram, and people are being bombarded with the negative. Whereas in the past, people were completely ignorant of their condition, right? They didn't know any better, they didn't have access to information. So the amount of information that we have today gives us the impression that things are worse than they actually are. And that's not true. Like, we need to look at the data and see that things are much better. And I think bringing information of the good things in society, it's important too. So like, use social media better to promote these ideas is important too, especially to fight the pessimism.
All right, I've got another question here. This is another good one. Dr. Benzecry, thank you for your time. You continue a legacy started with Dr. Haywood here at Northwood and so many others. What is your impression of students' receptivity to the ideas and principles of freedom that you share?
It's a great question. I think the students in Northwood are more optimistic than other students in other universities. And I think because of the business component, right? Because freedom is not only theoretical. So here I gave a theoretical and historical presentation of freedom, but to really understand its benefit, you have to live it. And I think the students that come to Northwood, they're willing to live a life that is free. They're willing to engage in free enterprise. They want to engage in the private sector, and a condition to do that is a condition of freedom. So they're already inclined to want freedom, so they can pursue their career goals. And but it's still like you have to show why freedom is important, but they're going to be receptive to that idea. And it's not only the students; most people are. This is freedom is a human condition. We seek freedom. We seek knowledge, and when you present this, I think it's almost universal that people want to learn more about it and they start appreciating more. And I think that ties also to the previous question, that we need to show the bright side a little more, especially where we are today. But yes, it's positive. The students here are amazing and embrace these ideas for sure.
I agree. Okay, we don't have any additional questions, so I'm going to wrap this up. Again, I want to thank Dr. Benzecry for joining us today, and I want to thank all of you for joining us online today. Just a few more upcoming events. We do have Winter Wonderland, which will be happening on campus here in December. That is where we decorate the mall walk. Thanks to some donations from Northwood alumni and friends, and we offer horse and wagon rides through campus for our students and for our community. So hopefully you can join us for one of those. We'll also put that in the follow-up email if you'd like more information. Also, December 3rd, we're hosting an Alumni and Friends holiday party here in Michigan. So if you are in Michigan, make sure to join us at Cauley Ferrari on December 3rd. And we'll, again, post all of this additional information in the email we send out to you all. Thanks again, and we look forward to seeing everyone on the next alumni webinar.